The disciplined ranks of the immortals merely bypassed them and continued towards the East Gate.
Oh.
Leonidas
Yo!
enter one of the more infamous traitors of Western history, Ephialtes.
I don't know who the hell this guy is.
It's 480 BC, and in the midst of an invasion by the mighty Persian Empire, the famed 300 Spartans stand side by side with their allies. King Leonidas knows that the fight against Xerxes begins that day, but feels only a grim, calm impatience to check the arrogant hordes that would presume to conquer all. The great King Xerxes observes the stubborn several thousand Greeks arrayed for battle, perhaps confident his vast army will quickly sweep aside their pitiful defenses and send them scurrying back into the lands he would soon rule. Greek blood would redden the earth. These insolent peoples would bend the knee, and his father's defeat at Marathon would be avenged. The ground shakes as the first wave of warriors approaches the allied phalanx. The war for Sparta and for all of free Greece was on. As with many great events of history, the events surrounding Leonidas, Xerxes, and their army's iconic struggle at Thermopylae can be directly traced to the earlier defeat of the first Persian invasion that commenced in 492 BC. During the reign of Xerxes' father Darius, the Persian Empire had launched a largely successful invasion in response to Greek interference in the Ionian Revolt, which saw Darius reconquer Thrace, subjugate Macedon to his will, and solidify Persian dominance over the Aegean Sea. However, though largely successful...
Who is Thrace? I keep seeing this, like, in all the reactions that I do. I keep seeing Thrace. Who are Thrace? I heard that they were, like, a people. Who are Thracians? No one never answered that question.
Successful in his objectives, the invasion failed to incorporate all of the Greek lands into the King of Kings' vast domain. Indeed, around a decade before Thermopylae at Marathon, the allied army of Athens and Plataea defeated the invaders and denied the Persians mainland Greece. Even so, the presence of Persianized Thrace and Macedon so close to their own homes could not have soothed concerns of those free cities that the King of Kings' designs were truly checked. The Persian or Achaemenid Empire was truly the superpower of the age, having its origins in the rise of Cyrus the Great. The domain of the great kings covered an area from Egypt to the Indus, from the Aral Sea to Macedon, on the very doorstep of the Greek states themselves. Darius's empire was vastly more powerful in resources and men, and the King of Kings now set to the task of organizing his overland campaign to finish the defiant Greek states once and for all. Alas, for Darius, this was not to be. Having passed away in 486, Xerxes assumed his father's place and inherited the ambition of subduing the Greeks. A revolt in Egypt in 486 delayed this, but by 481, Xerxes' own preparations were well underway. As well as the pontoon bridges and a canal, supply depots dotting the Thracian and Macedonian coastlines left the defiant Greeks in no doubt that the reckoning was fast approaching. So who was this new King of Kings bent on avenging his father? Xerxes was...
I thought Xerxes was black. Shit, I'm thinking about that movie where the guy goes, "This is Sparta." Why would they make Xerxes black? Wait, no. Am I having freaking schizophrenia? Freaking hell! I could have swore in that movie they put Xerxes as black.
Was the first son born to Darius following his own rise to power. His own lineage was impressive, not only as the son of the reigning great king, but no less than a maternal grandson of Cyrus the Great himself through his mother, Atossa. Darius obviously held high hopes for his tall and handsome younger son, as Xerxes was made heir apparent over his elder half-brother, Artabazanes. Undoubtedly noting that his predecessors had conquered before him to solidify their grip on the throne, for Xerxes then the pressure was doubly so, given his rise to the throne was through selection rather than strict primogeniture. Far from a coward or weakling as implied from a reading of Herodotus, as a king of kings, Xerxes by definition was a warrior, endorsed by a warrior elite, the succession running from father to son. Having subdued the Egyptians and perhaps the Babylonians too in 485, Xerxes also campaigned in Africa and Asia. All this...
Whoa! To be honest, I don't know nothing about this guy.
Lies in the face of the cliché effeminate caricature of the Eastern despot. As for the other great figure of Thermopylae, King Leonidas couldn't have been more different. As the leading state and most powerful of the alliance, Sparta could thus arguably boast supreme status in the Greek world. At the time of Thermopylae, of course, King Leonidas ruled as the Aegean monarch. Around the age of 60 at Thermopylae, Leonidas had not long reigned as king, only having assumed the title 9 years before. As the third of 4 sons born to Anaxandridas II, Leonidas likely never expected to become king. Though married to Gorgo, daughter of Cleomenes, he was well placed to do so after the dodgy demise of his elder half-brother. Prevented from mobilizing their full army due to the taboo of doing so during the yearly festival in Apollo's honor, this then was the king who led the famous 300 out of Sparta to jointly face the oncoming wrath of the Persians in 480. Given his age of around 60, it's quite...
This nigga was 60? This nigga was... Bruh. 60-year-old man with 300 men. Bro, that's some boss level shit, man. Yo, bro. Nah, this guy is him.
Likely Leonidas's military
what in the world, man?
Was grounded in the smaller conflicts that were typical of his time. While opposition to the Persians was focused on Sparta and her Peloponnesian allies, the joint victors of Marathon, Athens, obviously had a vested interest in resistance, given they were to be given particular attention by Xerxes, and so also joined this alliance to form the Hellenic League, which was further bolstered by various other cities and islands. Thessaly too had initially elected to fight, and in that spirit reinforced a hoplite force that would contest the Persians at the Vale of Tempe. However, upon learning the true extent of their foes' numbers, and realizing this position was untenable, had little choice but to yield to Xerxes. The remaining allies thus zeroed in on Thermopylae to make their stand, while at sea the Hellenic fleet would hold position to the east off the north of the island of Euboea to contest the Persians. The army that Xerxes had gathered at Sardis in the autumn of 481 was indeed massive by any estimation. To the Greeks, even the modern conservative estimates of 80,000 that made up the total number of the Persian army would have seemed gigantic. Though Herodotus's total strength of over 5 million is grossly overinflated, then a Persian force of upwards of the lower hundreds of thousands was more than enough to crush Greek resistance once and for all. With the onset of spring, Xerxes' colossal army lumbered west across the Hellespont and towards central Greece through the vassal countries of Thrace and Macedonia. At sea, the Greek fleet held its position about 40 miles east of the army, set to halt any Persian attempt to turn the land forces. It's likely too that the fleet here also sought to prevent a full Persian takeover of Euboea, from which there was a short jump across the narrow strait into Attica and Boeotia. Luckily for the Greek fleet, the superior Persian fleet was mauled by a storm en route to the area off the coast of Magnesia.
There's always a storm. There's always a storm. I swear. I said this before, but not much people was really watching me back then. Not much people watch me now. But every single historical thing regarding a navy or like a fleet, like there
was this epic armada that was so massive, absolutely massive.
Storm comes, destroys it. Oh, what luck! I swear, bro. There's always a freaking storm that comes and destroys the freaking fleet. Like always, bruh. Bring it out.
Having spied their Greek foes from their temporary base of Agatai, the Persians decided to send a detachment to round Euboea and cut off the Artemisia fleet. This force of ships too, however, was caught in a storm off the eastern shores of the island, while the Greeks had sailed to engage the remaining Persians.
You have got to be kidding me. You have got... What is with storms and ships? It's like a magnet, I swear.
Fighting a fierce days-long engagement with the reduced
that's
Persian
just too
fleet,
funny, man.
the Allies had taken significant losses, though the Persians too had suffered.
Yeah, the Persians
However,
outnumbered them like
unable to afford
a lot.
these losses, unlike the Persians, the Greek fleet withdrew to Salamis to await better circumstances to fight.
Here's the thing, right? Okay, I said before that I'm not gonna be pausing much. I'm gonna let the video play for a bit and then continue, and that seems to be working. But just bear with me. This is the last time I do that here, for this video, anyways. But when you outnumber someone, right? You're supposed to use that advantage. Now I know that might seem like, oh, the sky is blue, water is wet type of information, right? But like when it comes to casualties, bro, if you outnumber them, hopefully, as long as you're using your men right, who cares if you have high casualties? Like seriously, who cares? I know that might seem heartless, but like on a objective strategic level, like the Greeks were forced to retreat. You achieved your goal. That's the whole point, to achieve your goal. So you're taking a lot of casualties, but as long as you achieve your goals, it's kind of like it makes the whole casualty thing redundant. Now you can say like, oh, they might need to replenish and whatnot, and that's true. But that's why I'm saying, if you have like an overwhelming, like just, especially if your men are inferior in number, like very inferior in number to you, like if you have a really like overwhelming force, right? That doesn't matter. Like if you're taking losses, they're probably taking losses too, and they can't really replenish. If you can't replenish, they definitely cannot replenish.
Meanwhile, on land, Leonidas was readying his
last time I
men
paused
at
like that.
Thermopylae.
On this video, at
Famously
least.
narrow in general, the level passage squashed between the mountains to the left and the sea to the right was particularly narrow at 3 points. The so-called east and west gates were particularly narrow, while the middle gate, though wider, had other advantages. This point in the pass formidably guarded the left flank of the holding force with a sizable sheer cliff, whereas the other gate's landward approaches were merely steep but not sheer. A further plus for Leonidas was the presence of the Phocian Wall. Though somewhat in disrepair, a wall had been constructed by the Phocians to help contest the invasions of their enemies, the Thessalians. The day before the commencement of battle, Leonidas set his men to repairing it as best they could, though only so much could be done about the major disadvantage of trying to check the Persians in this area. The Anapeia path did present a way around the Allied position. However, as with all invasions in a time where maps were rare if non-existent, such local knowledge was beyond the foreign force. To guard the path, the Spartan monarch dispatched about 1,000 Phocians. These...
Is that how the Persians won? Because of this path? That's like the only thing I knew about this battle. Is... the Spartans were holding, but the Persians discovered like some path, and because of that they just went around, and that's how the Spartans... I think that's what happened, right? I don't know. I could be wrong, to be honest.
Local men certainly had the most to immediately lose, and in theory were likely to sell their lives dearly to any would-be aggressor. Being a history buff, nothing gets my blood boiling.
I hate War Thunder. I guys, you have no idea. I used to play War Thunder. I quit. I freaking quit that game. I honestly quit like 99% of games
before the first blood of battle. In that time, Herodotus famously relates how a Persian scout spied the Spartans calmly combing their hair or working out near to the Phocian wall. On asking his advisor Demaratos what this was all about, the exiled Spartan king signaled this was a Spartan battle preparation. Though bizarre to the great king, the wearing of their hair long was actually a privilege granted on reaching manhood, alongside the more famous donning of the red cloak. Preferring this style due to the belief it made them appear taller and thus more imposing in battle, it's little wonder then that Xerxes' spies sighted the Spartan homoi meticulously combing and oiling their locks.
What the hell?
This lull before the storm, Xerxes also sent another envoy to the Greeks to lay down their arms, to which the Spartan monarch laconically replied in true Spartan fashion, "Molon labe, come and get them." This impertinent reply may have finally spurred Xerxes into action. Given the disparity between the numbers of each host, and likely learning a larger Greek...
What the... Bro, why is that so funny? This is ridiculous. Clear the way. I don't know why. Bro, the way how history marches like make some of these people like say these like random... It's not random, but like give these like characters like these sentences. Bro... I don't know why. That's just funny in my head. Like the way... Bro... Like I don't know, I'm thinking about the way how he's like saying it, like how he's saying it in person. Like this is ridiculous. Clear. I don't know why. It's just funny. Okay.
Force had already dispersed on the rumor of his might. The defiance of this meager army may have astonished and angered the great king in equal measure. It's likely his delay had been to merely await the dawning of reality on Leonidas and his doomed comrades. With no meek withdrawal forthcoming, the King of Kings ordered his Median and Kissian forces forward to clear the way. As intended, the superior numbers did little to tilt the scales of fortune in Xerxes' favor. Of course, no small amount of bravery and determination also aided the defenders. Another factor to success, however, was the way in which the Greeks fought. Xerxes, by attacking this way, was allowing the Greeks to fight the battle their way, spear to spear, eyeball to eyeball. The Greek style of fighting, common to all the levy citizen soldiers of the Polei, was the phalanx formation, the tight and near unstoppable mass of men, shields and spears that was ideal for defending the narrow terrain. Factor into matters the hoplite soldier's panoply. A man would wear the Corinthian-style bronze helmet, while his torso would have been covered by his wide aspis shield. Bronze greaves protected the lower legs of the combatant, while on the offensive side of things, the long spear of around 2 to 2.5 meters long outreached the average Persians. Further protected by
So this is basically impossible. This is basically impossible to break
a
through.
coat of bronze or
This is literally
linen.
impossible.
In contrast to the average Persian assailant, it's little wonder why Leonidas's allied army was so deadly over those 3 days of bloody melee.
Breaking, whoa, breaking your position.
With a smaller spear and a wicker oval-shaped shield in the main. Most Persian infantry would also wield a composite bow with a quiver of iron-tipped reed arrows. In addition to the usual double-bladed dagger, the typical sidearm of the Persian, the more fearsome battle axe was also a mainstay. Of these weapons, the bow was undoubtedly the national weapon, so to speak, and even a symbol associated with the Persian kings. Indeed, in previous conflicts, masses of volleys were often used to clear enemy formations, yet on this first day at Thermopylae, Xerxes' melee-focused approach had led to severe losses. Part of the Greek strategy ahead of the wall was to feign retreat, only to quickly halt and turn on their pursuers. This rapid escalation of hopes and collapse of progress must have taken its toll on Persian morale, alongside the mounting bodies of their comrades. By keeping the battle a mobile affair, Leonidas was also cleverly mitigating the deadly effect of the Persian archers, denying his foes a fixed target. Having beaten off this first series of assaults, Leonidas must have thanked the gods that Xerxes impatiently ordered his best men forward to engage in the later afternoon. Perhaps the king appreciated that his army was still relatively fresh. Better now than to face Xerxes' elite when wounds and weariness were worse for his men. The Immortals, as the Greeks named them, were no joke. Mostly made up of native Persians, along with smaller numbers of Medes and Elamites, these elite professionals presented the best Xerxes had to offer, while within these 10,000 so-called silver-butted infantry also marched the so-called gold-butted elite within an elite, 1,000 of the noblest and bravest of the Immortals. Known as the king's spear-bearers, but also colloquially referred to as apple-bearers due to the golden-shaped butts of their short spears, this innermost personal guard of the great king were formed from the noble class, the other 9,000 picked as the cream of the commoners. Led by Hydarnes, in the event, despite their own fearsome reputation and on paper outnumbering the entire Greek force that day, the Immortals could not dislodge Leonidas and his comrades. Having fought off the initial waves and then Xerxes' best, Leonidas may have allowed himself a brief window to hope that his army could hold indefinitely or long enough for Xerxes to rethink his approach. The second day of fighting was similar to the first. The great king's men fell on the Greek formations like waves upon a rock.
Bro, this
However,
is...
as in nature, so too with war. Over time, though relatively fewer in number, the Greeks inevitably took wounds and losses, the solid rock of defense inevitably slowly eroding.
Yeah, like I said before, like, if you overwhelmingly outnumber an enemy, just... you can literally just throw yourself at them. And this applies in modern warfare, too. I actually heard someone say somewhere that commanders used to think with this logic, but since war has gotten so much more like media, right? Like the media has been reporting on so much more wars, they report on casualties so much. You know, there's more and more outcry like, oh my gosh, no, like a few hundred people died, no. But before, yeah, you just kind of just send them. That's what I heard someone said. Like before, the people didn't really care. I should better say, like commanders and generals didn't really like care on how much casualties they took as long as they took the objective. Especially when they outnumbered the freaking enemy. Like you know, I might be thinking like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? You sound dumb. Not really, because like I said this before when I was reacting to World War One. I said infantry charges aren't really obsolete. Infantry charges can still work. Like I literally watched a video where these group of people from a certain group, which I can't name, otherwise my video would get demonetized. But this group known as ISIS, everyone knows who they are. You know, I was like watching combat footage from their, you know, point of view, right? Or POV. And, you know, they were literally just doing, like, they were winning because they were literally, like, doing these, like, what would seem like suicidal charges, but it actually worked. Like, they would break through lines so quick, like, hordes of them. I literally just see hordes of them just running towards the enemy, usually, like, in a building or something. And the thing is like, you know, you're one guy, you're nervous, you know, you got a gun. Yeah, a gun could go bup, automatic. But you're still human. And the gun can jam. Guns jam a lot, actually. A lot of people tend to overlook that. There's even, that's why one of the main things that they train in like every army that's, you know, competent is how to unjam a gun. Because guns jam, bro. Okay? And you run out of ammo. Why do you think whenever you watch these like combat videos, you don't really see people spraying? You just see them like, you know, duh. You know, not just spraying, emptying the whole round. Because, you know, ammo. You don't have infinite ammo. Right? So, I say all of this because when you have a whole bunch of people running at you, right? In some cases, you know, if the enemy is really well defended, that's dumb. Obviously, you don't do that. But there's many cases where you can just do a full-on charge and you would break through the enemy. Like when you have people running at you, right? They also have guns too. Send a few people to cover fire and simply just shoot at them. Just shoot at them. You have guns too, you're running towards them, just shoot at them to suppress them. Simple as that. So that you can close the distance. Because again, you are human. You might be thinking to yourself, oh, well, they could simply just position themselves, you know, in a good spot before you even do that and mow you down. Bro, most people in combat, 99% of people in combat, they're shaking. They're shaking, bro. They're shaking. It's hard for them to reload because they're scared. One bullet, they're dead because they're scared. Naturally, 99% of people in combat. If you have a whole bunch of people running towards you who are also shooting at you and running towards you, buddy, is your head gonna be thinking clearly? No. And this goes back to what I was saying with those ISIS videos that I would watch. Like, that's what they did. Even other people in the comments were like, oh wow, no wonder why these guys expanded so quickly. Because all they did was just run towards the enemy and just shoot and run. And it worked. And they just overwhelmed the enemy. You force them to retreat because they can't reload in time because they have people bolting at them. Even if they mow down one group of people, right? You still have more people coming towards you. So you gotta reload quick. And you're closing the distance fast. Now, the reason why I'm going into such detail here is because I don't want people thinking that I'm like dumb or stupid for saying that charging at the enemy is not obsolete. Because like hearing that right off the bat, like surface level, you'd think that, yo, that's really dumb to say, but no, it's not. It's not. It's really not. Like, bro, it's not. Okay. Now, if you have a gun that has infinite ammo, then yeah, charges are completely obsolete. But again, this all ties back to what I'm saying of casualties. Like, if you're willing to take casualties to complete an objective like this, Like, bro, like casualties don't matter. Oh my goodness, like, bro, you think wait, IS is just charging at people and taking a whole bunch of casualties? Like, you think they care? No, they freaking expanded impressively enough.
Herodotus informs us that the Greeks fought in relays, so that much, if not the majority, of the hard fighting must have been done by those non-Spartiates present. Perhaps then, Leonidas held back at times in grim respect for his allies, though undoubtedly at other times the 60-year-old monarch would have been in the thick of things in true Homeric style. This period must have been frustrating for Xerxes. Likely observing events from an elevated position, his numbers and threats had done little to advance his cause. What he really needed to change his fortunes was decent local knowledge of either an alternative route into mainland Greece, or a means to clear the obvious route in front of him. Enter one of the more infamous traitors of Western history, Ephialtes.
I don't know who the hell this guy is.
Ephialtes, hoping for a suitably grand reward from the great king, offered to lead enemy soldiers along the mountain path that would allow Xerxes' men to take the Greeks in the rear. Leaving nothing to chance, Xerxes sent all of his immortals with Ephialtes, their only block en route being the unseen 1,000-strong Phocian contingent. Herodotus indicates all the remaining immortals made the march, which means the guardian army of Greeks must have been heavily outnumbered many times over. Having marched through the night, Dardanus and the immortals closed in on the Phocian position. Equally shocked, the immortals loosed their arrows. The Phocians, though brave, mistakenly believed themselves to be the intended target of the Persian elite and retired to some high ground to exact a bloody price for their deaths. In response, the disciplined ranks of the immortals merely bypassed them and continued towards the east gate.
Oh. Yo, imagine you see that, bro. You like expecting a fight to the death and then that happens. What do you do in that moment?
His fate was sealed with the coming of deserters in the night. The news of the Persian maneuver being confirmed by his own lookouts just after dawn. Taking counsel again, Leonidas sent the majority of the remaining Greeks away, electing to remain with the 300, or what was left of them, as well as 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans. On the surface, modern audiences may wonder why Leonidas, faced with such a hopeless situation, didn't simply withdraw all his army and fight another day. According to Herodotus, the Spartan king had his own reasons for remaining himself. According to the oracle at Delphi, either Sparta would be laid waste, or a king of Sparta would fall. The Persian pincer would close on Leonidas and his remaining men between 9 and 10 in the morning, though unsurprisingly, given the difficulty of exactly coordinating such an action, Dardanus and the immortals were late in coming up the rear. Unlike on the previous days in which the Greeks fought in relays at the narrowest point of the middle gate, Leonidas now moved his position forward to contest the Persians in a wider area, the better to fully deploy his remaining forces. Advancing in good order at first, as the Greeks closed with the Persians, the latter's volleys must have undoubtedly done some damage. Breaking with normal custom, Leonidas then ordered an all-out charge, and it was now that desperate fighting broke out, the king himself at the forefront. By quickly advancing on a wider front, the arrows may have inflicted less damage than otherwise. Conversely, the Persian losses were said to have exceeded those of the previous 2 days. It was around this time that Leonidas likely roared his last battle cry and fell among many of his comrades. A furious battle over possession of the king's body now ensued. The surviving Greeks ferociously pushed back the Persians.
Damn, they were fighting for his freaking body? What the hell, man?
Before
I was reading that there.
Possession. The sheer desperation of the last fighting was related to by Herodotus, writing that when Greek spears were broken, they wielded their swords, and when they too were lost, they resorted to using their hands and teeth. Despite this last grim success, however, the inevitable loomed with the final approach of the immortals from the rear. Upon realizing the time was near, the Greeks withdrew through the Phocian wall and redeployed on a hillock to await their final fate. At this point too, the Thebans' resolve finally broke as they broke off from the Spartans and the Thespians, fleeing towards the Persian lines. Many were slaughtered in a blood rage, though most offers of surrender were taken. These fortunate men were later branded with Xerxes' mark for their troubles. With the immortals also finally upon them, the Phocian wall breached. The enemy decided to wisely finish those surviving Greeks with a storm of arrows.
Wow. Wow! You can't even give them an honorable death. Wow.
So ended the battle at Thermopylae.
Shaking my head.
With the fall of Leonidas and his rear guard, Thermopylae began its long history as arguably the icon of the famous Last Stand. However, though the battle cemented the Spartan legacy in the pages of history, their glorious last stand would have been of limited comfort to the inhabitants of Locris, Boeotia, and Attica. Xerxes would not soon forget Leonidas or his estimated 20,000 losses at Thermopylae, and would exact a
How much was his army?
retribution.
Yo, how much was his army that he started off with? Like 100,000?
Though its population had been evacuated. At sea, the free Greeks were far from vanquished. Though defeated at Artemision, they scored a decisive victory at Salamis, which forced the withdrawal of the Persian fleet back to Anatolia.
Okay, Greece, I see you.
As for the great king himself, he returned home too, leaving the bulk of his land forces to finish business in Greece. Alas for Mardonius, the would-be satrap of a conquered Greece, his star would fall soon after. Gathering the largest army seen up to that point, nearly 40,000 hoplites, Spartans included, the Greeks defeated the Persians at Plataea, freeing themselves from the threat of Persian subjugation for good. The defeat of the Second Persian invasion of Greece did much to foster a wider ethnic and cultural sense of Greek identity as contrasted with barbarian folk. In Athens especially, the conflict was framed as an ideological struggle, the Greeks representing freedom over tyranny, a view of the conflict that largely persists in the Western public consciousness down to the present day. Shout out to War Thunder again.
Well, that was good. I thought that after Thermopylae, the Persians had conquered all of Greece, but wow, guess not. That was wrong. The Greeks actually managed to beat them back. That's a Greek victory. I mean, the Persians won the battle, but the whole goal was to conquer all of it, and they weren't able to conquer all of it. The Greeks managed to keep some sense of independence of the victory. If you like my reactions, you're new to my channel, make sure that you subscribe, man. If you are active on my channel, I highly recommend you become a channel member. 99 cents a month. Thank you to the people who already became my channel member, bruh. Turn on the bell notifications. Link is going to be in the description below regarding the benefits that you get as a channel member. You know, you can ask my members themselves. They are not disappointed with it, okay? Again, it's only 99 cents a month. When we get to 7 people, I'm going to get a Discord server. But anyways, If you know any reactions, once again, that you know I would love to react to, comment it down below. Eventually I'll do it. Thank you for watching and goodbye.